I was in a budget meeting at work when the text came through. A notification from my sister, Sarah, with a photo attached. Crystal blue water, pristine white sand, and her grinning face, partially obscured by an enormous tropical drink garnished with pineapple and orchids. Florida is amazing, the caption read, 3 exclamation points like her enthusiasm needed that much punctuation. A strange, cold dread settled in my stomach. I excused myself from the conference room, fingers already trembling as I typed back, "How did you afford Florida?" The response flashed across my screen within seconds. "Thanks to your credit card. Don't worry, I only spent $100,000. You're welcome for the frequent flyer miles." I stared at those words until they blurred. My credit card. $100,000. The hallway tilted slightly. I pressed my palm against the cool wall, steadying myself. This had to be a joke. Sarah loved drama, loved getting reactions, but this seemed extreme even for her. My phone buzzed again. Another photo, this time of her lounging by an infinity pool, designer sunglasses perched on her nose. A third image showed shopping bags from Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton scattered across a hotel bed. I called her immediately. Finally, she answered, her voice bright with a forced cheer. "I was wondering when you'd notice." "What are you talking about?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "What credit card?" "The one Mom gave me, obviously," she said. "She told me you opened it specifically to help the family, so I figured you wouldn't mind me using it for a little vacation. I've been so stressed lately." The puzzle pieces started clicking together in my mind, forming a picture I desperately didn't want to see. 3 weeks ago, Mom had been diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer, stage 3. The treatment plan was extensive and expensive, even with insurance. Dad had passed away 2 years prior, leaving her with a house but not much else. Her savings had evaporated during his final illness. I'd researched every option, contacted every foundation, applied for every grant. Nothing would cover the gap. So, I'd done what I had to do. I'd opened a medical credit card with a $200,000 limit. The interest rate was criminal, but it had a 12-month, no-interest promotional period. If I worked overtime, cut every expense, maybe picked up freelance work on weekends, I could pay it off before those rates kicked in. I'd given the card to Mom 2 weeks ago with explicit instructions, medical expenses only. Chemotherapy, radiation, medications, consultations. I'd even written out a list. "Sarah," I said slowly, "that card was for Mom's cancer treatment." "Oh, please." Her tone shifted, losing the fake sweetness. "Mom's fine. She's got insurance, doesn't she? Besides, you make way more money than I do. You can afford it. Where are you right now?" "I already told you, Florida. Orlando. The resort is incredible. 5 stars, oceanfront suite, spa treatments every day. I really needed this break." My hands had gone numb. "You took a medical credit card and went on vacation." "I didn't take anything. Mom gave it to me. She said you wanted to help family, and I'm family. Stop being so dramatic. I'm coming to get that card." "Too late. I already maxed it out. But seriously, don't stress. Just pay the minimum payment each month. That's what credit cards are for." She hung up before I could respond. I stood in that hallway for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My brain kept trying to process what had just happened, kept hitting the same wall of disbelief. Sarah had always been selfish, always played the victim, always managed to twist situations until she came out looking sympathetic. But this crossed every line I thought existed between us. I called Mom. "Sweetheart," her voice sounded tired but warm. "How are you, Mom? Did you give Sarah my credit card?" A pause. "She needed help, honey. She's been going through such a difficult time since her breakup. That card was for your medical bills." "I know, but Sarah was so upset, and she promised she'd only use a little bit, just enough for a short trip to clear her head. She said she'd pay you back. She spent $100,000. Silence on the other end, then quietly, that can't be right. She sent me pictures, Mom. Florida, designer shopping, a 5-star resort. Oh. The word came out small and broken. Oh no. Why would you give her that card? She was crying now. Mom's voice cracked. She said her boss was treating her terribly and she needed a break or she'd have a breakdown. She promised it would just be a few thousand. A cheap beach somewhere. I thought. I didn't think she'd. You didn't think she'd lie to you again? Mom started crying softly. I'm so sorry. I'll talk to her. I'll make her pay it back. With what money, Mom? She hasn't held a job for more than 6 months in the last 5 years. I hung up and immediately called the credit card company. The customer service representative listened to my story with professional sympathy and absolutely zero helpful solutions. I understand your frustration, Ms. Miller, but your mother is listed as an authorized user on the account. She had legal permission to give the card to anyone she chose. The charges are valid even though the card was specifically for medical expenses. The card itself doesn't have restrictions on purchase types. It's marketed for medical use, but legally it functions as a standard credit card. I'm very sorry. I tried reporting it as fraud. The answer remained the same. Authorized user meant authorized use, regardless of intent or agreement. By the time I got home that evening, I'd done the math 17 different ways. $100,000, plus the $70,000 I'd already mentally allocated for Mom's treatment, meant I was looking at $170,000 in debt. My salary was good, but not that good. Even with the promotional interest rate, the minimum payments would devastate me. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos. Sarah smiling, oblivious or indifferent to what she'd done. Mom's face when she realized. My own stupidity in trusting either of them. Morning brought another text from Sarah. Stop being mad. It's just money. You'll make more. Something crystallized in my chest. Then, a cold, clear determination. I called my attorney, Emily Davis, someone I'd worked with on employment contracts before. She listened to the whole story without interrupting. Do you want to pursue legal action against your sister? She asked finally. I want to understand my options. Realistically, you could sue her for the money, but collecting would be another matter entirely. If she has no assets or income, winning a judgment means nothing. You can't get blood from a stone. What about fraud? The credit card company already told you it's not fraud in their eyes. And technically, your mother had authorization to use the card. Whether that extended to giving it to your sister is murky legally. I pressed my fingers against my temples. So, I'm just supposed to absorb this? Not necessarily. Tell me more about your family dynamics. Has your sister done things like this before? Over the next hour, I laid out years of Sarah's behavior. The time she borrowed Dad's car and returned it with a cracked windshield, claiming someone had hit her in a parking lot when she'd actually been driving under the influence. The money she'd stolen from my wallet in high school, $50 at a time, until I'd finally hidden my cash. The college fund our grandparents had left us both that she'd blown through in 18 months while I'd carefully budgeted mine for 4 years. The pattern had always been the same. Sarah would mess up, claim victimhood, cry to Mom, and somehow emerge unscathed while I played the responsible one. Your mother enables her, Emily said bluntly. And you've been absorbing the consequences to keep the peace. What does that have to do with the credit card debt? Everything. Because here's what I think you should do. Stop protecting them from reality. She outlined a plan. It was ruthless. It made my stomach hurt just hearing it. But as she talked, I realized she was right. I'd spent my entire adult life being the stable one, the reliable one, the one who fixed problems and swallowed hurt feelings. Where had it gotten me? $170,000 in debt because my mother had handed a medical credit card to my irresponsible sister. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with coffee going cold in front of me. I'd rehearsed what I needed to say a dozen times, but my hands still shook when I picked up the phone. Mom answered on the second ring. "Sweetheart, I'm so glad you called. I've been up all night thinking about this situation with Sarah. I need you to understand something," I said before she could launch into another apology. "I opened that card specifically for your cancer treatment. Every dollar on it was meant to keep you healthy. I know, sweetheart. I made a terrible mistake. You made a choice, Mom. A choice to prioritize Sarah's wants over your own medical needs. That's not fair. I didn't know she'd spend that much. You knew she'd spend something. Money I'd earmarked for your chemotherapy, and you gave her permission anyway." Silence stretched between us. I could hear her breathing, could picture her sitting in Dad's old recliner, the one she'd kept, even though the fabric was wearing through. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "I'm not paying that debt. Either you find a way to pay for your treatment without that card, or you and Sarah figure out how to cover the charges she racked up. But I'm done being the family ATM. You're punishing me for trying to help my daughter. I'm protecting myself from being financially destroyed for your enabling. There's a difference." I hung up before she could guilt-trip me further. The rest of that day crawled by. I kept expecting to feel relieved after setting that boundary, but instead I just felt hollow. My phone stayed silent for exactly 4 hours before the first message came through. It wasn't from Mom or Sarah. It was from my cousin Chloe, Sarah's age, someone I saw maybe twice a year at family gatherings. "I can't believe you're doing this to your own mother. She has cancer. Sarah told me everything, and you should be ashamed." I deleted it without responding. 3 more messages followed within the hour, each from a different relative, each with the same basic script. Sarah had clearly been busy spreading her version of events. My Uncle Mark called around dinnertime. Unlike the others, he actually asked for my side of the story. "Sarah's saying you refused to help with your mom's medical bills and that you're suing her for taking a small vacation," he said carefully. I laid out the actual facts: the medical credit card, the $100,000 in luxury spending, the explicit instructions that had been ignored. He listened without interrupting. "Jesus," he said when I finished. "That's not what Sarah told anyone." "I'm sure it's not. For what it's worth, I believe you. Sarah's always been good at spinning stories. I remember when she totaled her car senior year and somehow made it sound like the other driver was at fault, even though she'd run a red light. Thanks for actually asking. Your mom know all this? The real numbers? She knows. She's just choosing to see Sarah as the victim anyway." He sighed heavily. "That sounds about right. Look, I can't tell you what to do here, but I've watched your mom bail Sarah out for years. Maybe it's time someone stopped." After we hung up, I felt marginally less alone. One person believing me felt significant when half the family was apparently ready to paint me as a villain. The next few days brought more of the same. Family members choosing sides, most without knowing the full story. My younger cousin, Leo, sent a long text about family loyalty. Sarah's former college roommate, someone I'd never even met, left a voicemail calling me heartless. I stopped responding to any of it. There was no point trying to defend myself to people who'd already made up their minds based on Sarah's lies. Work became increasingly difficult to focus on. I'd catch myself staring at spreadsheets without seeing them, my mind running through endless scenarios. What if Mom really did refuse treatment? What if her condition got worse? Would that be on me? Jessica, a colleague, noticed me zoning out during a presentation about quarterly projections. "You okay?" she asked afterward in the break room. "Define okay." "Fair point. Family stuff still?" I nodded, pouring another cup of terrible office coffee. "It's spreading. Half my relatives think I'm destroying the family over money. Are they offering to pay the $100,000 your sister took?" "Of course not. They just think I should absorb it and move on because that's what family does." "That's garbage. Family doesn't take your credit card and go to Florida while your mom's battling cancer. Hearing it stated so bluntly helped. The situation was insane. I wasn't crazy for refusing to accept it. That evening, I did something I'd been avoiding. I logged into my credit card account and looked at every single charge Sarah had made. I'd seen the total before, but not the itemized breakdown. Day 1, first-class flights for 2 to Florida, $8,347. Wait, for 2. I scrolled through more charges. Double occupancy hotel room. Couples massage at the resort spa. 2 sets of snorkeling equipment rental. Sarah hadn't gone alone. She'd taken someone with her. Probably whatever boyfriend she was seeing that month, funded entirely by money meant for mom's chemotherapy. The rage that hit me was white-hot and dizzying. I had to set my laptop aside and walk away before I threw it across the room. She'd taken a romantic vacation. While Mom was scheduling oncology consultations and researching treatment options, Sarah had been sipping cocktails with some guy. Both of them living like royalty on stolen money. I called Emily immediately. I need to amend the lawsuit. She didn't just take the money for herself. She took someone else on vacation, too. That doesn't change the legal framework, but it does make it more egregious. Send me the itemized charges. I'll incorporate it into our documentation. After I sent the records, I sat in my quiet apartment and tried to process the depth of Sarah's selfishness. This wasn't a desperate person making a bad choice in a moment of weakness. This was calculated. Planned, deliberately cruel. She'd probably been planning the trip for weeks. Had probably already invited her boyfriend before even asking Mom for the card. The crying, the claims of needing a break, the promises of just spending a little, all of it had been a con. My phone buzzed. Another message from a family member I barely knew. This one with a Bible verse about forgiveness. I blocked the number and poured myself a glass of wine. The preliminary hearing was still 2 weeks away, but Emily suggested we push for an emergency motion to freeze any remaining credit on the card and prevent further charges. Your mother is still an authorized user, she explained. Technically, she could give the card to Sarah again or use it herself inappropriately. We need to protect you from additional damage. The hearing for that motion happened quickly, just a conference call with a judge. Mom's attorney, she'd hired one by this point, argued that freezing the card would prevent Mom from getting necessary medical care. Your Honor, Emily countered, Ms. Miller's mother has insurance that covers the majority of her treatment costs. The credit card was meant to supplement that coverage for specific expenses. Given that she already gave the card to her daughter for luxury vacation spending, there's a demonstrated pattern of misuse. My client is already facing crushing debt through no fault of her own. The judge ruled in my favor. The remaining credit limit, about $96,000, was frozen until ownership of the debt could be determined. Mom called me that night, furious. You're trying to control my medical care now. What if I need that money? You need it for chemotherapy, not for funding Sarah's lifestyle. The judge made it sound like I'm some kind of criminal. You gave a medical credit card to someone who spent 6 figures on vacation, Mom. What did you think would happen? I thought my daughter would show some compassion for her seriously ill mother. The manipulation was so blatant it almost made me laugh. You're facing a serious health crisis because you're choosing not to get treatment as a power play. That's on you. She hung up on me that time. The next call went to Sarah, who'd apparently made it back from Florida. Finally decided to forgive me, she asked brightly. I need you to pay back the $100,000 you took. I already told you I didn't take anything. Mom gave me the card, and I can't pay you back right now. I'm between jobs. Then I'll be filing a police report for theft and a civil lawsuit for the full amount plus damages. Her laugh was sharp and disbelieving. You wouldn't. Mom will never forgive you. Mom can choose whose side she's on, but the consequences are on you this time. I hung up and sat in the silence of my apartment. My hands were shaking. I'd never stood up to Sarah like that before, never pushed back against Mom's guilt trips. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Emily filed the lawsuit the following Monday. I knew Sarah had no assets to seize, but that wasn't entirely the point. The point was making the consequences visible and uncomfortable. Mom called me 17 times that day. I let every call go to voicemail. Her messages progressed from hurt to angry to desperate. How can you do this to your own sister? Your father would be ashamed of you. Please, sweetheart, let's talk about this. We're a family. I deleted them without responding. 3 days later, my Aunt Carol called. Mom's older sister, the one family member who'd never sugarcoated Sarah's behavior. Your mother is having a meltdown, she said without preamble. I imagine so. She called me crying, saying you're suing Sarah and refusing to help with her medical bills. That's partially accurate. Good. It's about time someone held those two accountable. I blinked. You're not calling to tell me I'm a terrible daughter? God, no. I've been watching Sarah manipulate your mother for decades, and I've watched you sacrifice yourself trying to hold everything together. This needed to happen 20 years ago. The relief that washed over me was almost painful. I thought everyone would side with them. Your mother's siblings are split, I won't lie. But I'm in your corner. So is your Uncle David. We've both offered to help with her treatment costs, but she's refusing because she's mad at you. She's refusing cancer treatment to punish me for not enabling Sarah. Apparently, she says if you won't help family, she doesn't want anyone's help. The manipulation was so textbook, I almost laughed. That's her choice. I agree. Just wanted you to know you're not alone in this. After we hung up, I sat with that conversation for a long time. Mom was escalating, using her own health as a bargaining chip. It should have made me feel guilty. Instead, I just felt tired. The lawsuit moved forward. Sarah hired a cheap attorney who tried to argue that the debt was a gift since Mom had authorized the card's use. Emily demolished that argument with documentation showing the card's intended purpose, my written instructions to Mom, and Sarah's own text messages bragging about the spending. The preliminary hearing happened on a Tuesday morning. I took the day off work and sat in the courtroom watching Sarah squirm under questioning. She tried her usual tactics: tears, claims of misunderstanding, implications that I was wealthy enough to absorb the loss. The judge was an older woman with steel gray hair and zero patience for manipulation. Ms. Smith, she said, addressing Sarah, you received a credit card that was explicitly designated for your mother's cancer treatment and spent $100,000 on a vacation. My mother gave me permission. Did you know the card's intended purpose? Sarah hesitated. I thought there was enough for both. Did you verify that before spending? No. Did you ask your sister? She would have said no. So, you knowingly spent money allocated for your mother's medical care on a personal luxury vacation without confirming whether such funds were available or appropriate? Sarah's attorney objected, but the judge waved him off. I'm ordering a full accounting of the charges. We'll reconvene in 30 days. Outside the courtroom, Sarah cornered me in the hallway. You're really going through with this? Her eyes were red, but her voice was hard. You're going to destroy your own sister over money. You destroyed yourself, Sarah. I'm just refusing to pay for it anymore. Mom's not getting treatment because of you. Mom's not getting treatment because she's using her health condition as emotional blackmail. That's on her, not me. Everyone thinks you're heartless. Everyone who matters knows the truth. She stormed off, designer heels clicking against the courthouse floor. Probably bought on my credit card. The calls and messages from various family members continued. Mom's cousin accused me of elder abuse. A second cousin I barely knew sent a long email about forgiveness and Christian charity. Sarah's ex-boyfriend, of all people, texted to call me a selfish witch. I blocked them systematically and kept moving forward. Work became my refuge. My colleague Jessica noticed I was staying late more often. Everything okay? She asked one evening, finding me still at my desk at 7. Family stuff. The kind you want to talk about or the kind you Want to forget? I surprised myself by telling her. Not everything, but the broad strokes. She listened with widening eyes. Your sister spent 100 grand on vacation while your mom has cancer, essentially. And your mom gave her the card? Yep. Jessica shook her head slowly. I complained about my family being annoying at Thanksgiving. That's a whole different level. It gets better. Half of them think I'm the villain for not just absorbing the debt. That's insane. You know that's insane, right? Hearing someone outside the situation validate my reality helped more than I'd expected. Some days I'm sure. Other days I wonder if I'm overreacting. You're not. Trust me. What they did is completely messed up. The preliminary accounting came back showing that Sarah had spent $103,847.62 in 5 days. The itemized list was infuriating. First-class plane tickets, a presidential suite at a luxury resort, spa treatments that cost more than my monthly rent. Shopping sprees that would have funded Mom's entire first round of chemotherapy. When I showed the documentation to Jessica at work, her jaw actually dropped. She spent $9,000 in one store, Jessica said, pointing at a Gucci charge in one transaction. What could she possibly have bought? Probably bags and shoes she'll never use once the novelty wears off. And your mom still thinks you're the bad guy. My mom thinks family means absorbing whatever damage Sarah causes without complaint. Jessica shook her head. My sister borrowed $20 once and I had to chase her for 3 months to get it back. I can't even imagine this. The preliminary accounting also revealed something else interesting. Sarah had attempted to make additional charges after maxing out the card. Luxury car rental, high-end restaurant reservations, more shopping. The card had declined all of them, but the attempted charges showed a clear pattern. She hadn't planned to stop at $100,000. She would have kept spending until someone physically stopped her. Emily used that detail to strengthen our case. This shows intent and complete disregard for consequences. She wasn't trying to take a modest vacation and got carried away. She was deliberately draining every available resource. The documentation also included hotel records showing she'd extended her stay twice, each time booking more expensive accommodations. The presidential suite for the last 2 nights had cost $4,500 per night. Per night for a hotel room. I thought about my own apartment, my modest 1-bedroom that cost $1,400 a month. Sarah had spent more than 3 months of my rent on 2 nights in a hotel room using money that was supposed to keep our mother healthy. The rage had transformed into something colder by this point. Not hot anger, but icy determination. Sarah needed to face consequences for once in her life, and I was going to make sure it happened. Emily pushed for summary judgment using the new evidence. There's no ambiguity here. She knowingly misappropriated funds designated for medical care. The damages are clear and documented. Meanwhile, Mom's condition started declining faster. Aunt Carol called with updates that got progressively more concerning. She's lost 15 pounds. She's exhausted all the time. The oncologist is basically begging her to start treatment. What does she say? That she can't afford it because her ungrateful daughter froze her credit card and is suing her other daughter into poverty. Carol, I didn't freeze her medical care. I froze a credit card she'd already proven she couldn't be trusted with. She has insurance. You and Uncle David offered to help. She's choosing martyrdom. I know. Believe me, I know. I told her yesterday that she's being ridiculous and she needs to grow up and take responsibility for her choices. We had a screaming match in her kitchen. I'm sorry. Don't be. Someone needed to say it. I just wish it hadn't taken her getting this sick for me to finally stop coddling her feelings. That conversation stayed with me for days. Carol had enabled Mom for years, just like Mom had enabled Sarah. Now Carol was breaking that pattern, but possibly too late to significantly improve Mom's situation. The weight of that reality pressed down on my chest at odd moments. Sitting in traffic, standing in line at the grocery store, lying in bed at night staring at the ceiling. My mother might make her condition significantly worse because she was too stubborn to accept help that came with accountability. And somehow I was supposed to be okay with that. I wasn't okay with it. But I also wasn't going to rush in and fix everything like I always had before. That pattern had nearly destroyed me financially and emotionally. Breaking it hurt, but staying in it would have been worse. Sarah, meanwhile, had started a social media campaign painting herself as the victim. I didn't follow her accounts, but mutual acquaintances kept sending me screenshots. My sister is suing me for taking one vacation after years of struggling with my mental health. Family is supposed to support each other, not tear each other down. A broken heart emoji. The post had hundreds of sympathetic comments from people who didn't know the real story. She's crowdfunding for legal fees now, my cousin Leo texted me. This is getting out of hand. I looked at the crowdfunding page. Sarah had posted photos of herself looking sad and defeated with a long story about how she'd used a family credit card with permission for a modest trip and was now being viciously sued by her wealthy sister who wanted to see her destroyed. The goal was $50,000 for legal fees and living expenses. She'd already raised $3,200. People are actually giving her money, I said out loud to my empty apartment. My phone rang. Emily. Have you seen your sister's social media? Unfortunately. The crowdfunding page is a problem. Not legally, but optically. She's creating a narrative where she's the underdog and you're the villain. That could influence public opinion if this gets media attention. Can we stop her from lying on the internet? Not really, but we can document it for the court record. Judges don't look kindly on defendants who claim poverty while soliciting funds for living expenses that likely won't go toward the judgment. What should I do? Nothing publicly. Don't respond. Don't engage. Don't defend yourself on social media. It'll only fuel the fire. Let the court proceedings speak for themselves. It was good advice, but following it was torture. Watching Sarah play the victim while I stayed silent went against every instinct. I wanted to post the itemized charges, the hotel records, the evidence of her calculated actions. I wanted everyone to see the truth, but I stayed quiet, gritting my teeth through every sympathetic comment on her posts. The situation at work got complicated when a coworker who followed Sarah on social media made a comment during a team lunch. I saw that post about your family situation. That's really rough having family drama play out in court. Everyone at the table went quiet. I felt 5 pairs of eyes on me. It's complicated, I said neutrally. Your sister seems really upset about the whole thing. Jessica jumped in before I could respond. I think this might be one of those situations where social media doesn't tell the whole story. Maybe we should talk about something else. The subject changed, but the damage was done. Now, my coworkers were looking at me differently, wondering if I was really the kind of person who'd sue my own sister during a family medical crisis. I pulled Jessica aside after the meeting. Thanks for redirecting that conversation. No problem. Though I have to say, your sister is doing a really good job making herself look sympathetic online. She's had a lot of practice playing the victim. You could tell your side, you know. Set the record straight. My attorney advised against it. Jessica nodded slowly. That's probably smart, but it sucks having to sit there while people believe lies about you. Story of my life with Sarah, honestly. That evening, I broke my own rule and read through more of Sarah's crowdfunding page. The comments were even worse than the original post. I can't believe your own sister would do this to you. Praying for you. Family is supposed to support each other. Your sister sounds toxic. I donated $50. I hope it helps. Nobody deserves to be treated this way. Each comment was a small knife wound. These people had no idea what had actually happened, but they were convinced I was the villain in this story. One comment in particular made my blood boil. I know this family. The sister who's suing has always thought she was better than everyone else because she makes more money. She's been looking for an excuse to cut her family off. This is just sad. I didn't recognize the name, But they claimed to know us, which meant someone close to Sarah, maybe Sarah herself using a fake account, was actively spreading lies to make me look worse. I closed the laptop before I did something I'd regret. But before the next hearing, something shifted. Aunt Carol called again. "Your mother's in the hospital." My heart stopped. What happened? She collapsed at home. Dehydration and weakness. The cancer is progressing without treatment. Is she okay for now? But the doctor was pretty blunt. She needs to start chemotherapy immediately or the prognosis gets significantly worse. I closed my eyes. Let me guess. She's still refusing. She told the oncologist she couldn't afford it because her daughter wouldn't help her. The manipulation was so blatant. I almost admired the audacity. Almost. "I'll go see her," I said. "Be prepared. She's dug in pretty deep on this." The hospital room was private, which meant someone was paying extra. Probably Carol. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, her skin pale against the white sheets. "Hi, Mom." She turned her head slowly. "You came." "Of course, I came. I didn't think you cared anymore." I pulled up a chair and sat down. "I've always cared. That's why I opened the credit card in the first place." "Then why are you punishing me?" "I'm not punishing you. I'm establishing boundaries that should have existed years ago." She closed her eyes. "I'm facing a serious health crisis and you're talking about boundaries. You're facing a serious health crisis because you're choosing not to get treatment as a way to manipulate me into backing down. That's not on me." Her eyes flew open. "How dare you? Mom, I love you, but I'm not going to set myself on fire to keep you warm. Especially when you're the one who handed Sarah the matches. She's your sister, and you're my mother. You had one job with that credit card, and you failed. You chose Sarah's wants over your own health, and now you're trying to make that my responsibility." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I just wanted both my daughters to be happy." "At what cost?" "My financial security, your health. Where does it end?" She didn't answer. I stood up. "I love you enough to watch you make your own choices, even terrible ones. But I won't sacrifice my future to enable your mistakes. When you're ready to actually get treatment I'm still willing to help arrange through legitimate means, call me. Until then, I hope you figure out what's actually important to you." I made it to my car before I started crying. Huge, gasping sobs that shook my entire body, because despite everything, despite the manipulation and the enabling and the years of being taken for granted, she was still my mother. And watching her choose pride and manipulation over survival was agonizing. But I didn't go back. I didn't call. I didn't break. 2 weeks later, Aunt Carol called with an update. "Your mom started treatment." I gripped the phone tighter. What changed? Uncle David and I sat her down and told her we'd cover the costs, but only if she stopped the nonsense with you and Sarah. We also told her that if she refused treatment one more time to play mind games, we'd walk away and let her deal with the consequences alone. She listened. She didn't have much choice. The doctor scared her straight about how fast the cancer was advancing. Reality finally got through. Is she still mad at me? Furious. But she's getting chemotherapy, so I'll take it. Relief and grief tangled in my chest. Thank you for stepping in. We should have done it years ago. I'm sorry we left you to deal with her and Sarah alone for so long. The civil suit against Sarah proceeded to final judgment. She was ordered to pay the full amount plus interest and court costs. The judge's written opinion included some pointed commentary about unconscionable misappropriation of medical funds and flagrant disregard for familial obligations. Not that it mattered practically. Sarah had no income and no assets. The judgment would sit there accruing interest, probably forever. But Emily had one more card to play. We can garnish her wages. She said she doesn't have a job. She will eventually. And when she does, a portion of every paycheck will go toward this debt until it's paid. It'll follow her for years. Good. There's also her tax refunds. Those can be seized. Any inheritance she might receive. Any lottery winnings. Basically, any money that comes to her through legal channels can be intercepted. The idea of Sarah spending years looking over her shoulder, watching potential money slip away before she could touch it, satisfied something dark and justified in my soul. 6 months passed. Mom completed her first round of chemotherapy. The cancer responded well. Aunt Carol sent regular updates, but Mom and I still hadn't spoken directly. Sarah, meanwhile, had spiraled. According to family gossip, she tried to get several jobs, only to have the wage garnishment scare off employers. She'd moved back in with Mom briefly, but they'd fought constantly. Last I heard, she was living with some boyfriend in a questionable part of town. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and sad and relieved in equal measures. Then one Tuesday evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mom standing there. Thinner than before, but steady on her feet. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside wordlessly. She sat on my couch, hands folded in her lap. "I owe you an apology." "Okay." I spent a lot of time in treatment thinking about how we got here. About all the times I chose Sarah's feelings over your needs, about how I taught her that tears and manipulation would get her what she wanted. And I taught you that your job was to hold everything together. I sat down across from her, not trusting myself to speak. Carol made me see a therapist. She said it was part of her conditions for helping with treatment. I fought it at first, but... She paused. The therapist asked me why I gave Sarah the credit card. I said because she was crying, because she needed help. And the therapist asked why I didn't consider that you might need help, too. That you'd taken on an enormous financial burden to save my health, and I'd undermined that to spare Sarah's feelings. What did you say? I didn't have an answer, because I'd never thought about it that way. I'd always just thought of you as strong, as capable, as someone who could handle things, and I took advantage of that. Tears were building behind my eyes, but I held them back. "I'm sorry," Mom continued. "I'm sorry for giving her the card. I'm sorry for trying to guilt you into fixing it. I'm sorry for using my health condition to manipulate you. I'm sorry for every time I chose keeping the peace over protecting you. Why now?" My voice came out rough. "Why apologize now?" "Because I almost jeopardized my life choosing pride over sense. Because my sister told me if I didn't get my act together, I'd risk losing both my daughters instead of just one. Because I finally realized that enabling Sarah wasn't helping her. It was destroying her. And it was destroying you, too." We sat in silence for a long moment. "I can't go back to how things were," I said finally. "I can't be the one who fixes everything while getting hurt in the process." "I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking for a chance to do better." "What about Sarah?" Mom's face fell. "I told her she needed to get a job and start making payments on the judgment. She screamed at me that it was my fault for not giving her the life she deserved. We haven't spoken in 2 months. I'm sorry. Don't be. I created that monster. Now I have to live with it. But I don't have to keep feeding it." Over the following months, Mom and I rebuilt something. Not what we'd had before, that was gone, burned away by betrayal and hard truths, but something more honest, more balanced. She updated me on her treatment. I told her about work. We didn't talk about Sarah unless necessary. The credit card debt got transferred to a personal loan with a slightly better interest rate. I'd paid off about $30,000 so far through aggressive budgeting and overtime. It would take years, but I'd manage. Sarah resurfaced occasionally in family gossip. She'd bounced between 3 more boyfriends. She'd been fired from 2 jobs. She declared bankruptcy, which wiped out most of her other debts, but didn't touch the judgment I held. I didn't feel triumphant about her struggles. I just felt done. 2 years after the Florida trip, I got a letter from a debt collection agency. Sarah had gotten a decent paying job, and they'd started garnishing her wages. The first payment was $347.82. I stared at that check for a long time. It represented roughly 3 hours of the vacation she'd taken with money meant for Mom's cancer treatment. At this rate, she'd be paying for the next 25 years. I deposited it without ceremony and got on with my life. Mom's cancer went into remission. She apologized to Carol and David for her behavior and worked hard in therapy to understand her enabling patterns. She sent Sarah a letter saying she loved her but wouldn't be offering financial or housing support anymore. Sarah responded with a vicious tirade that Mom showed to her therapist instead of hiding. Progress. I dated someone for a while, a man who asked good questions and actually listened to the answers. We didn't work out long term, but the relationship taught me I was capable of trusting someone again. Work promoted me. The raise helped with the debt payments. Life moved forward. Sometimes I still saw those photos in my mind. Sarah grinning in Florida, drink in hand, my financial security draining away with every swipe of that card. Sometimes I wondered if I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I remembered Mom's face in that hospital bed, choosing manipulation over treatment. I remembered years of swallowing hurt to keep the peace. I remembered the sick feeling of discovering those $103,847.62 in unauthorized charges. And I remembered that I'd finally learned to put on my own oxygen mask first. The debt would eventually be paid. Mom was healthy and learning healthier patterns. Sarah was facing consequences for the first time in her adult life. None of it was perfect. Most of it still hurt, but I was still standing, still solvent, still capable of building a life that didn't require me to set myself on fire. That had to count for something, right?